A recent article by NASCAR on Fox's Bob Pockrass went over some of the guys that are going to be free agents going into the end of the 2026 NASCAR Cup Series. Some of those drivers include the likes of Kyle Larson, the defending series champion, Brad Keselowski, who of course is part owner of RFK Racing and one of the older drivers on the circuit at the moment. But there's other drivers, including 23XI's Tyler Reddick, Hendrick Motorsports' Alex Bowman, Penske Racing's Austin Cindric, and RCR's Kyle Busch. Pockrass says only two organizations, Trackhouse and Joe Gibbs Racing, appear relatively stable, barring something unforeseen. I would venture to say that you don't know how long Denny Hamlin's going to be around, and they need to have somebody on deck. He employs one of those guys at his other team in 23XI Racing, which might affect Tyler Reddick's future. But he has won races at 23XI. He's won and competed for a championship. He's also earned Final Four in the old format. He also ran for RCR and won races for prior to Busch's arrival. Reddick is said and quoted in this article saying, "I just work as hard as I can. I try and leave every last ounce of myself out there on the racetrack every single week. As long as I stay committed to being myself, being who I am, and driving to my limit and continuing to find ways to improve, I'm not worried about it." And that's true. Last year was an off year for him. Billy Scott, that whole 45 team, they did win with Bubba Wallace at the Brickyard 400, but it was an off year for the organization. Of course, dealing with the lawsuit, the no charters, all that went on. But would venture to think that they're going to be on a bounce back mode, and losing somebody who's in his prime, who's shown to be a winner and has been able to compete for Final Fours in the old format, I think is something that 23XI doesn't want to lose. And I do believe they want to grow to their full potential, meaning 3 cars. So the notion of Corey Heim, the defending Truck Series champion, being there, he's going to be running limited races this year. So he's going to be around too. That's what they want. They want a 3 organization. Alex is also quoted in this article, and his talk about his rides has been an issue for many years for him. After driving for smaller organizations for the early part of his career, he connected with Hendrick with Dale Jr. and was able to drive the 88 car after Dale Jr.'s retirement, which then morphed into the 48 after Jimmy Johnson's, and the connection with him, Ally. He says in regards to pressure, he was quoted as saying, "I don't think so. It's kind of par for the course, right? I just look at the situation that I'm given and try to maximize and do the best job I can with what I have to work with. So obviously I'm doing the best I can to try and go win races for Mr. Hendrick," which is the whole point. The biggest person I would say is Kyle Busch. When you look at RCR as an organization, of course the lawsuit brought out some interesting details. He hasn't won as long as winless streak in his Cup career. He struggled outside of the Cup car to win races, even in a truck. Does an opportunity possibly open up at 23XI? Of course, Kurt Busch wasn't able to finish his career the way he wanted to, and he works there as an advisor and driver coach. Is it possible that Kyle Busch returns to Toyota? Or maybe does Penske give a thought to Kyle Busch instead of Austin? Something to be determined, and I guess we'll find out as the season goes on. Kyle Busch also was quoted as saying it's going to take a little bit of time before you get a sense of where you're at. I've always kind of said once you get to the Coke 600, that's sort of like where you fall in the season, where your points are and where you kind of stack up. You can go about 1 or 2 places higher or lower than where you're at currently. With the new points format, that makes a lot of sense, and I guess we'll find out with the drivers and everybody else here during this 2026 season.